Hi, I'm Bobby, and this is Rough Cut Woodworks. And today I want to show you how we take this rough, hard maple and turn it into this router bowl. Now I've done quite a few of these over the years, and I've learned some tips and tricks and hacks even around the wood shop that I really want to share with you. Follow along. Let's make some router bowls.
So first things first, we have to take some rough cut lumber. See what I did there? Rough cut. And mill it so that we have two parallel flat sides, flat faces. Now, these boards were wider than my jointer. Usually I'll start on the jointer to get a flat face and then a reference edge to 90 degrees to that flat face. But these boards were about 8 inches wide and my jointer is only 6 inches wide. So here you see what I'm doing is skip planing. When you skip plane, you're flipping the top and bottom over on the board and taking material off of each side a little bit at a time in hopes that you get both sides flat and parallel. Then we took a short little trip over to our vintage Craftsman jointer, dropped our push stick on the ground, and used that new flat reference face to machine a nice 90-degree surface, making sure that our board had one flat face and one edge that was 90 degrees to that flat face. Here I'm checking with my eyeball, which is very well calibrated, the overall quality of my jointer cut. And I repeat the process on the other board. Now you may hear that this board actually doesn't contact the joiner blades in the middle. So I do something a little different here. I pull the guard out, start my cut from the middle of the board, which eliminates the high spot in the back end. This gives me a little bit of a cheat here, and then lets me create a nice flat surface. That second cut. Now that we have our wood nice and flat and square on one edge, we can take our template for our router bowl, mark where we want the bowls to land. I chose this particular corner because it had this really beautiful figure. It was cut around a knot in the rough sawn lumber, and I really wanted to use this piece of wood for something a little more special than just like a cutting board, something basics. I wanted to elevate the wood and let that grain really speak for itself. You might be wondering, why are you marking two bowls on one piece of wood? We'll get to that in a minute. Next, we bring the pieces over to the miter saw, and we're going to cut the bowl blanks down into a rough size. Now you might be thinking, again, why are there two bowl blanks on one board? Why not just cut them into individual bowl blanks? That's a great question, one I'm going to answer very shortly. Next step is over on the drill press, where we installed the biggest Forstner bit I have in my arsenal. I believe it's 1.5 inches. And what we're going to do here is remove the majority of the waste in the middle of these bowls. What I've found is that this, while it takes some time on the drill press, saves far more time and wear and tear on the router bits that I use for this process. So removing the majority of the waste from the center really helps to speed up the actual routing process when we get to that point. Well, if you're still here watching this boring clip, see what I did there? I'd really appreciate it if you would give my channel a subscribe. YouTube is new for me, and this is something I want to do more of, and I'd like to hear from you guys. Comment below. I also don't think you're ready for this patent-pending dust removal technique. Get ready for the wood chip flip. Here it comes. And no one else could do that like me. That's simply, it's all skill. It's years and years of practice. And we're just going to continue using this Forstner bit to remove the waste from all 4 bowl blanks. In the interest of time, I think it's good to just turn on turbo mode on the drill press every now and then. I do have to say, this turbo speed is probably my favorite drill press speed. This is definitely not sped up in any way, shape, or form. My drill press is just faster than everybody else's. Just in case you were sick of it, there's one more boring clip here. This is, I believe, the last bowl blank. Removing the waste. Getting those chips out of there with the patent-pending chip flip technique. Give it a try. It's life-changing. Last little bit in the middle here to get rid of. And then it's on to the next step. Alright. Now I figured it'd be a good time to talk you through why I left these round trays as a set of 2 on one sort of blank, as opposed to cutting them separately. And I'm going to show you sort of my thought process and some of my live and learn life experience as to why I choose to use larger pieces like that versus doing each tray sort of individually. Now the next step is going to be routing the inside of these trays with a bowl bit in my router. Now I have a wide base. It's going to fit no problem over that template. However, what I have found, unfortunately, is that if you try to do something with an individual piece like this, even if you're careful, I double stick my piece down onto the work table and then my template onto my workpiece, and this still happened. The workpiece separated from the table, ruined this template. I kind of keep this in my shop as a reminder to slow down, think through my process, and find a safe way to do things that may otherwise be dangerous. So like I said, I like to use double-sided tape to put my workpieces down on the table, so this is what you see me doing here. I'm using some X-Fasten 1-inch tape, double-sided tape. I love this stuff. I don't know when I bought it, where I found it. I used to use carpet tape, but this X-Fasten is just, it's so much better. Use the backing, take the backing off, try as hard as I can. There it goes. Oh, can you tell that I'm a pro? And we just squish it down on the table. And there's 1. And 2. That's not going anywhere, right?
See, not going anywhere.
Oh, okay. I believe you. So something that I love to do if I'm setting up a template for multiple cuts on the same piece of wood, but I only have one template, is I will take this double-sided tape and I will set all of the tape on all of the pieces, even though I only have one template. Now what this does is saves me a considerable amount of time when I need to swap the template out to the next piece of wood that I need to cut. The tape is already there, I leave the backing on, and then all I have to do is remove the backing, move the template from the one I just cut to the one I need to cut, and I'm back to the router to make my cuts. I get to show you exactly how this works later in the video. Stay tuned. I like to start with a template bit first. That way I can sort of sneak to the bottom of the bowl before I get into the bowl bit, because the bowl bit is huge and it's still a little intimidating if I'm being honest. So we're using the template bottom bearing bit here to slowly work our way down the inside diameter of the bowl. Make the first cut, drop the router down a little bit more, make the next cut, and around, and around, and around, and around we go. Another thing to note, I just recently picked up this Centec vacuum hose with quick attach ends, and I don't know how I managed to get this far without using one of these. This is by far the best vacuum hose I think I have ever used. I don't know why I waited so long to upgrade. You get the idea. We just use that template bit to work our way down the inner diameter of the bowl until we get to the very bottom where we had got the depth from the Forster bits. At the end, it should look something like this. Then we switch over to the template bowl bit. Now this bit has a 1/4 inch radius and is honestly pretty aggressive. It's an aggressive cut. It's a bit much for this cordless M18 router. And you'll see later in the video that I actually swap over to my large Bosch plunge router to make the cuts with the bowl bit. Now I like to cut using the router in basically a circular pattern, so I'll start on the very outside and then sort of work in a spiral towards the center. What you see me doing here is actually just making one last pass, just sort of scanning almost like layers back and forth, just to make sure that I've gotten the majority of the waste out of the bottom of the bowl. Here's how the inside of the bowl looks right after the router. A couple ridges here and there, but overall, not bad. Now is when that tape trick really comes in handy. We've routed the bowl, now we have to move the template over to the next setting. Another helpful hint, if you ever had to remove double-sided tape like this, you know it sucks. But the best thing for removing double-sided tape is more double-sided tape. Just use the tape you just took off, stick it to the tape that's still on your wood, and I promise you it will save you so much time. And now that we've pre-applied this tape, it's as easy as just peeling the backing off, lining up our template with our pencil marks, and then our bowl blank is ready to get routed. It's that easy. Squish, squash, applesauce, it's on there. It was at this point that I decided I would break out the big Bosch 1617 EV router with plunge base and use the bowl bit in that router instead of my M18 trim router, because this bit still scares me a little bit. And I just feel like I have more control with this large router and with the larger base, and can control the depth of cut a little bit better. Here you see me setting that up, getting the router in the plunge base. And then using the template, we set the plunge base on and get our depth of cut for the center of the bowl just right. Using 2 routers with 2 bits installed made the rest of the bowls go fairly easily, and quickly, I might add. Being able to switch back and forth from the flat template bit to the bowl bit in a quick manner allowed me to really batch the other 3 out very quickly. Here you see the final product of the inside of the bowls. Next step is over on the bandsaw. She's an old gal, but she still gets the job done. Don't forget to set your blade guard height. Safety first, kids. I like to follow my pencil line about as close as I can. For me, that's mostly because I only have one decent flush trim router bit, and it is only a 1/4 inch diameter. You will also notice that my bandsaw, like my drill press, has this convenient turbo mode. Now, if you get to a point where you need to take a tiny little bit off with the bandsaw, another little tip here is that you can bring the back of your workpiece to the bandsaw and use essentially the backside of the teeth on the blade to grind away at the excess material. It was at this point in the project that I realized I had just made the coolest King's Crown. And I am very upset to tell you that the shot of me wearing the crown was just out of frame. One more little cut, and this bowl's free. Look at that grain. Beautiful. Also, apparently dust collection does not exist on my bandsaw. We've got the inside of our bowls, trays, routed. All the waste is removed. We've got the outside on the bandsaw cut as close as we can get to that line we drew with the template. Now what we're going to do is mount the template back up, flush trim the outside at the a little DIY router table, and then it's time for some edge profiling, some round over work, and then sanding, and we're done. 4 little bowls. How about that? Now, I know this is probably going to surprise a lot of you, but the next step in these router bowls is in fact more routing. We come over to the router table where I have a 1/4 inch flush trim router bit with a top bearing, maybe it's bottom bearing, a top bearing, I don't know, one of the two. It's a compression bit, and we're working around the outside of the template to make the outside of the bowl perfectly round. Template is the key here. After that, we swap the bit to a 1/4 inch round over bit so that we can match the radius of the inside of the bowl and give all of the 90-degree corners a nice rounded profile, really pleasing to the hand. Now, the router table worked really well for those outside edges. I just don't trust myself working an edge that I cannot see. So for the inside edges of the bowl, I double-sided taped all 4 bowls down to the table, then used that same 1/4 inch bit in my trim router. I put a nice complementary round over on the inside edges of every single bowl. It's just another perfect example of how in woodworking there's probably 6 or 7 different ways to do the job or task you're looking to do. You just have to think a little bit outside the box. With the machining done on the edge profiles, we get a really good look on how these router bowls are going to look when they're finished. So I guess this is where I tell you where the next step is sanding these bowls. And that would be true if I didn't get sidetracked and discovered that these bowls could spin on their side. So I spent a couple minutes twirling these bowls for fun. Why not? Unfortunately, the time came to actually sand these bowls. And the one downside, I will say, to making something round that was originally square is that it takes absolutely forever to sand these inside edges without the proper tooling. This is one little trick I found. It was a really cheap padded 2-inch sanding disc, I believe off of Amazon, and it works pretty good for the bottom center of the bowl. I still haven't found a great way to sand the inside. I would love if you guys have something in mind to put it up in the comments. That would be really appreciated, because this is probably not the last set of bowls I'll ever make. There's only one more thing to do before our final sand, and that's popping the grain with a little bit of water. Now what this does is takes those wood fibers, think of them like hairs, and everything we've sanded so far, some of them have sort of been bent over and not actually sanded over. So by hitting them with a little bit of water, those fibers stand back up on end, causes a rough surface that we can then sand down. So the next time the wood gets wet with our finish would be ideal. That rough feeling is gone. We set them down, wait for them to dry. And with the magic of time lapse, this is done in only a couple of seconds. Nice. Finally, we get to the last round of sanding. I got this new sander. It's a Bosch conventional random orbital. It's great. It's so great it just sanded a piece. It sanded a bowl right off the table. There's no good way to hold a round piece of wood. I'm convinced. One last sand, every last surface. And then I've got one more trick up my sleeve to make these stand out just a little bit more. This is my newest tool. It's a MechPow 10-watt diode laser. And I have been having a lot of fun designing things, engraving things, cutting things. Recently I've taken to putting my maker's mark on the pieces I make with my diode laser. Here you see me setting up the piece on my grid, or spoil board as it were. And what we're gonna do is frame out where the design is going to land on the workpiece. The grid on my spoil board was done with the laser engraver. It sets a set of absolute coordinates and allows me to position properly where exactly I want the graphic to go. This laser has honestly been a game changer for my workflow, and I cannot wait to utilize it in more projects coming up. Look how clean that looks. This is an extra step that I don't think many people do, I suppose, but it's something I've found to be very helpful. It's using a tack rag, they're really cheap. Just pick up a bag of them at your local home center, and it works really, really well for removing that fine dust on your workpiece that you can't necessarily see, but it's definitely there. This extra little step makes finishing your pieces just that much nicer, honestly. I think I've done enough talking for this video, so I'm gonna let sort of the footage do the talking for the next minute or so as we get some finish on all this hard work. Enjoy.
So there you have it. It's how we took square, flat lumber and turned it into these beautiful, smooth, round maple trays. Perfect for knickknacks, keys, pocket dump, EDC, whatever you want. Hope you learned something, and I hope I was able to bring you some value and maybe share some tips that you might not have known previously about template routing, bowls, trays, turning something that's square into something that's not square. If you enjoyed this video, I'd appreciate hitting that like button, hitting the subscribe button, and a little bell, I think, that tells you the next time I post something. I don't know when it'll be. I got a couple ideas in the works. Tell me what you want to see below, and I will work to make that happen.